Everything's better with dragons. Oh, come on. It wasn't that bad. House of the Dragon. All right, buddy. I'm going to set you down. Season 2. It's back. So, before I could even get into this, I had to watch an entire recap. I did not remember very much of the overarching plot of the first season. I remembered bits and moments, but trying to connect those in my head, I was drawing a lot of blanks. And actually, the one that HBO or Max or whoever put out themselves was not that helpful because it was just a really extended version of when they do previously on Game of Thrones where they just connect a whole bunch of clips and basically if it doesn't immediately jog your memory where you go, oh, right, that, you're just going to be lost. I found the Nerdist's recap to be far more helpful. But once I was caught up again, I remembered what the heck was going on. Yeah, this picks up decently. I'll honestly, I won't have that much to say. It's solid. It's a solid start. It is sort of picking up after a pretty big event at the end of the previous season. So yeah, it's got some pieces to move around. It's got some stuff to establish. It's got some fallout to deal with. But people aren't immediately meting out the consequences of what happened. They're just dealing with the aftermath and getting ready for what will likely be very, very, very violent consequences to come. So, first thing, I like this intro better. I like this credits with the weaving of the tapestry. While I don't super love the effect of the thread like without a needle. It's very CGI, like more so than I've found some of these intros, but I still like it better than just the blood flowing from thing to thing, which got visually old very quick in the first season. Still doesn't have a patch on what Game of Thrones did for its opening, even though it keeps using the same music, but it's still better. I like it. And yeah, like I said, there's a whole lot of reestablishing of stuff, reminding us who's who, who's where. I mean, not really reminding us, but picking up again. Like I said, it's a good thing I checked the recap. But, giving us a sense of where people are. I like that Rhaenyra is not immediately launching into vengeance as part of her own mourning of her son's death. She needs to know. She needs to know for certain that he's gone, and she's out trying to do that. Meanwhile, Daemon is being Daemon and very much wanting to kick this war into high gear. And you have those contrasts between the people who really don't want to go to war, but recognize it's probably going to happen no matter what. And the people who also recognize it's probably going to happen no matter what and are like, cool, let's go. And maintaining that internal conflict even within each side of this war, that's pretty good. I think it was a little bit cheap to open on the wall. Like that felt very cheaply pandery. Like pander is a phrase that I think gets overused, and pandering can be a decent thing sometimes, depending on who you're pandering to and how you do it. But this felt like very cheap pandering. Be like, hey, here's one of the things from the show that you liked before it ended really badly. Here's one of the parts of that show we didn't show you last season, huh? You remember when you liked Game of Thrones? Ha. And I mean, maybe we'll come back to the Starks and the Wall, but I have a hard time buying that because we know the White Walkers aren't a thing yet. They will not be a thing until, the Game of Thrones, and that is a significant amount of time down the line, and we've already seen it. So showing off the wall did feel a bit pandery, but whatever. This show is desperate to remind people of Game of Thrones, but only the parts of Game of Thrones that they liked. It's really trying to strike a balance there, and good luck to them. If there's an overall thing about this that still makes it a little bit less than at least the early Game of Thrones seasons for me, is that it is still focusing almost exclusively on the royalty, on these families, and at the very least, it's doing that right from the get-go, and it's just keeping with that. The issue with Game of Thrones is Game of Thrones early on actually did have an eye on what was going on with just the normal people and what was happening to them, and had some characters who were tied in with that. Here, it's barely anything. And by the end of Game of Thrones, it's like, yeah, we're going to pretend that the people don't exist except for when we're going to have Daenerys burn them for very poorly established reasons. But, you know, at the very least, this thing's more honest in its intentions. Last season started us focusing on these families, and yeah, we're sticking with it. And this is largely a here's where everybody currently is on the game board kind of a thing. And actually, I was finding myself being like, okay, like this is fine. I guess it's doing what it needs to do. And then it decided to go super hard and kill a child. And that was my little wake up moment of, oh, right. This franchise doesn't mess around. Like, honestly, I kind of needed that reminder. And it's weird. This is actually really weird coming from me. Because if you've been watching me for a while, you know I have a lot of issue with what I consider to be needless cruelty. And I very frequently have a big issue with harm, violence, or even traumatizing of children. I'm not going to say it's always bad writing, but it is not pleasant for me. It is very difficult for me, and I tend to not enjoy it, even if I understand why it's there. Here, I mean, maybe it helps that I barely know this kid anyway, but also I think the other part of it is this is like a reestablishment of a statement of purpose for anything Game of Thrones or House of Dragon related. Like, yeah, reminder, see that kid? Now you don't. And like the other thing was, it didn't feel needless. It felt well established, you know, what the other side was excited. Hell, it's the title of the episode, A Son for a Son. And it just shows that escalating, you know, it's the phrase, an eye for an eye eventually leaves the whole world blind. And we are now on that path. But even that specific moment, it builds up to, like, I think this probably would have hit me wrong if the scene had been taken from the perspective of the queen, and it was like her having put her children down, and then these two guys show up, and then the scene plays out as the rest of it. I probably wouldn't have liked that, but something about focusing in on these guys who, okay, the rat catchers as assassins, I actually really like, not in a way that I need them to appear again, but I love what they do for this setting and for just building the tension to this moment, because they're in here and they've snuck their way in. They have a cover story, but they're not, you know, flawless assassins. They're not like rappelling down the roof into the window and be like, ooh, silent as the night. They're not ninjas. They're just a couple of guys who got paid coin, and they need to go up to the second floor, and the one who got them in doesn't really know his way around up there. And they manage to thread it where, like, it shows the practical level of not incompetence, but just not knowing exactly where they need to go in order to do what they're trying to do without turning it into bumbling. Instead, it just ratchets up the tension because you're like, who are they going to find, and who's going to find them, and what's going to happen? And I also actually really appreciated that the guy who had his knife to the queen's throat, while I'm not going to say that was pleasant, I was dreading that he was going to sexually assault her. I mean, given the history of the show, I felt like that was almost a certainty. And he didn't. And that would have been needlessly cruel. That would have been completely unnecessary and unwarranted. And yes, defenders will go like, oh, but that's just what the world's like. Yeah, I know. I don't need it reemphasized over and over and over and over again. You're already emphasizing to me how cruel and horrible and misguided all this is by the fact that they are beheading a child. You don't need to throw that into the mix. I don't need it. It doesn't help, and it makes this harder for me to watch, and it's not there. This thing threads a very fine line with what goes on at the tail end, and that honestly makes the episode for me. You know, seeing these characters and the way they're sort of grinding against each other, even the allies, and sort of seeing where the cracks are liable to form and whatnot, and seeing some characters that I remember liking, some characters I remember hating. That freaking guy who, Alicent is boinking. I hate that guy. If he could get killed this season, that'd be great. Like, he's terrible. Like, it's not the actor. The character is just like, I don't want you around. You aren't fun. You aren't intriguing. You aren't even, I'm not even going to have fun really watching you die. I just want you gone. I just don't like him. But, you know, I'm just seeing all this and moving through the space and like, right. I remember. And then the show's like, yeah, but do you remember that we do this? No, I don't want to say I'd forgotten, but it wasn't at the forefront of my mind, and you just put it back there. And good on you for doing it. So, a decent enough opening episode with a hell of a kick in the teeth at the end to remind you of what the show's capable of. That having been said, the final moment that it ends on is weird. Not like the moment's weird, but like, why would you end there? Like, I just can't help but think it would have been a much stronger cut to credits moment if it had been the queen, you know, going with her daughter and just, you know, just taking her off like into a hall down the way, and we don't know who it is she finds or who she tells first or whatever. Like, end there. I think that would have been a lot stronger than she bumbles into Allison boinking this moron and goes, the boy's been killed, or the boy's dead, or whatever it is she said. Like, that's it's just a weird semi-soft moment to end on. I don't know why they did that. It doesn't break it or anything. It's just weird. Just struck me as weird. Anyways, Son for a Son, House of the Dragon. Not a bad start by the end. And it wasn't like it was a slog up until the end. It just felt pretty bog standard. And then it reminded me why this show kind of kicks ass when it remembers how to. And it did in this one. So, yeah, what'd you think about this one? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. And I can keep folks like this little guy fed. Oh, God. I haven't shown him off in so long. I'm wondering, how many people here even realized I had a dragon? I don't know if that was a known fact anymore or not. Regardless, even if you can't help me out through Patreon, like, share, subscribe, all help me out. There's links to other stuff I do down in the description. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Jean Foray, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Renabulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toku Bluhuvian, Pao Rabajagal, and Mariji. If you'd like to hear your name in the credits or even just see them, there are rewards on the Patreon, so maybe check those out.